Hello YouTube, this is Loyal to Law once again, and this time in this video I'm going to be demonstrating to you the advanced version of doing the hip rotation. Now that said, beginners and intermediate practitioners, I strongly suggest to you to stop this video right now and really perfect in doing the hip rotation, or at least the understanding of correctly doing the hip rotation by watching the past videos that I already made, or other YouTube videos regarding about the hip rotation that could really help you in fully understanding it. Now for the advanced practitioners, you remember that I made a hip rotation video using a type of instrument doing a hip rotation using a towel. So where you hold the towel on your rear hand, so if you're a right-hander, your rear hand would be the right because that's your power hand. So you hold the towel like this and you do this type of motion using the hips. Now we're going to do the same technique, or rather same techniques, using a different kind of instrument. And that would be this. Yes, this is a broomstick that I found and picked up from one of the junkyards that I passed through going to school and back. And as you've noticed, I already removed the broom head, and the reason being is if you're going to practice your hip rotation using a broomstick, and I know that some of you already have a broomstick at home or in your apartments, that if you practice your rotation using a broomstick, the broom head might end up flying across the room or across your training area, so to speak. And yeah, it would break a lot of things that you regret that you've broken. And so I suggest you to really remove the broom head of your broomstick. And if you can't remove the broom head for some reason from your broomstick, at least make sure that it will not fly off. Because as I'm going to be demonstrating within this video, you'll see that the hip rotation power that I'm going to do is enough to shake the broom head and fly off across the room. And for those of you who don't have a broomstick, any kind of stick with this type of length is enough. Or if you have a stick that's longer than head height, which means your normal height, if it's longer than that, it might be quite difficult for you to practice, or at least associate yourself in practicing with this video. So without further ado, let's begin. So using the past video that I made using the towel, we're going to do the same technique. But instead of just having an instrument on one hand, we're going to hold the stick with two hands. It's more difficult to do the technique with one hand because it's too long, and you're going to hyperextend your elbow with whatever hand you're using. So we're going to hold the stick with two hands. Your lead hand, the hand that's in front of you, is going to hold the bottom part of the stick, and you're going to place it here, beside your left hip. If you're a right-hander, usually your left side is going to be your lead side, the side which is going to be in front of you. And your right hand is going to hold the top part of the stick, preferably close to your face or having your right elbow close to your ribs. Now we're going to do the same motion from our past towel hip rotation video, like so. Notice that this is really, really different. Unlike the towel hip rotation video where I hold the towel in my rear hand and I do this motion, I really have my right hand come across my body. Using the stick, it doesn't let you come across your body because of the limitation that you can only do. And that's a good thing, actually, because if you're going to practice a hip rotation using the stick, it's a different kind of training. It helps you do most of the techniques that you can do in martial arts, particularly in the upper body, or using your upper body, doing hand techniques mostly. To do those kinds of techniques using the hip rotation and within your limited range. let me demonstrate here doing the side view version of it. So before we're doing the towel, like so, coming across our body, using the stick, it helps us to stop within our striking range. See? That's the very, very huge difference right there. The towel hip rotation shows you or helps you train on the power of your hip rotation, whereas using the stick helps you somewhat do the same power or use the same power in using the hip rotation, but instead teaches you to do the techniques within your range. Like so. And this is without the hip rotation first. Because what happens is if you're solely concentrating on doing the hip rotation using the towel, you're going to do techniques in over-exaggeration. Especially if you're doing sparring or if you're doing self-defense techniques, God forbid, outside the street. You're going to hyperextend and overreach, and what happens is not only are you very, very open, but it also injures yourself instead of helping you because you're really hyperextending the joints that you're using, straightening your back, for instance, if you're hyperextending, and have overstretched muscles. So practicing the hip rotation using the stick, and this is the reason why it's advanced, helps you really control those types of movements. Now, if you've already noticed, this is practicing already one martial art technique. And that would be this right here. In other martial arts disciplines, they prefer you to have your lead hand, in this case my left hand, close to my face, left side of my face, or at least have my left elbow close to my left side on the ribs, while I do my right straight. On the karate systems, they would prefer having your left hand, your lead hand, close to your hips, chambering your left side while doing your right straight. Notice that my right straight is also in the same striking distance, or at least similar to the striking distance of using the stick right here. My elbow is not hyperextended, it is relaxed. It is straight sometimes, but depending on the stick that you're using, the length of the stick that you're using, it helps you not overextend. See? It gives you that springy or springy effect, which helps the joints because if you hyperextend, it really locks the joints in doing certain types of techniques, in this case a right straight, and it hurts your elbows, it hurts the joints, and it strains the muscle within the arm, so you don't want that. Now, one of the secrets why it helps, the stick, helps you limit the range, or tells you your, you call that striking range, there you go, striking range, is because of the other end of the stick, which you're holding with your lead hand. Because once it's telling you really to stop extending your other arm or extending the other side of the stick because of this part hitting or at least touching your left side. So it's there. Stop. 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 So what happens is while you're pushing with your right hand with the top part of the stick, you're simultaneously or almost same during the direction, holding the bottom part of the stick, pulling on the other direction. So instead of just doing this motion, you're doing this motion and this motion. So, like so. Now we're doing the hip rotation. So this is without. This is with the hip rotation. Front view, side view, on this side to show the rear hand. See, notice that my rear hand's elbow is not hyperextended. The left side touches, my left hand is touching the left side of my ribs. I'm not hitting myself with the bottom part. It's just touching the left side of my ribs. And it automatically tells me to stop right here. I'm not overextending. I'm not over-exaggerating my martial arts technique, my right straight. And I just do the technique in place. If you're going to translate that without using the stick, it'll look like this. I'm going to do the karate motion right here. See, I'm not really trying to reach in. I'm not overextending my elbow really, really straight and really, really locked. I'm just trying to mimic whatever I did to or with the stick. Now you could also practice using the stick on some type of circular movements or circular strikes rather, like the hook, for example. So instead of doing the straight, you could also practice the hook, which is like that, or at least the slap. So what you do there is, instead of holding it like this, you're going to hold it upside down, or on the other way around. So your lead hand is going to hold the bottom part now lifted up, and your right hand or your rear hand is going to hold the top part now at the bottom. So it's going to be switched. Instead of doing this, it's going to be like this, like so. On the hook motion, it's very, very similar to what baseball players do, the batters, where they usually do this type of motion, or from here. Also very similar to what the golfers do. Instead of doing it from below, you're doing it on this level, chest level, like so. From here. So we're going to do the lead hook, which is the hook that you're going to do in front of you. So from here, you're going to imagine that you're slicing through. Now this one takes a bit of practice, because unlike doing this motion, which is really, really kind of easy to remember and kind of follow for your body to associate with, this one is really outside your normal movement. So you have to think that you have a huge axe and you're trying to chop a huge tree in front of you, like so. Notice that I'm naturally swinging with my upper body as I'm doing it slow. As I do it side view here. So instead of in this stance, you switch it. So the left part now is at the top, the right part is now at the bottom. And you slice through. Now with the hip rotation, now the key difference of doing that motion with this motion is that in this motion you're lifting your rear leg's heel to push yourself a bit forward. Whereas doing this motion, you're lifting your left or your lead leg's heel in order for you to transfer your body weight back. So instead of leaning forward because of the lifting of your heel from your rear leg to do this technique. And this technique, you're lifting your lead leg's heel to transfer your body weight back. So what happens is, instead of doing this, you're doing this. See where my body weight is here right now? I'm more heavy on my back side than on the front side now. Because this one is where you distribute your body weight. If I extend here, doing this type of motion and pushing my body weight forward, this one I'm kind of leaning back, like so. So instead of doing this, you can see that I'm pushing myself a bit forward. Not overextending, but a bit forward. I'm not trying to lean back, doing this technique. Not really exaggerating that I lean back like this because I'm going to fall over. Or the worst case scenario, break the knee of my rear leg. Just enough for me to have my rear leg's foot flat and feel that my rear leg is really, really solid on the ground. Like so. So if I do it with hip rotation, front view, see, I'm just cutting it across right here. Now you can also do the same technique doing the rear portion, or should I say using your rear hand, like so. So do it slow here. So instead of doing this motion, the forward motion, we're going to cut across, kind of like cutting a tree with a huge X. Still, I'm holding the bottom part, just touching firmly to my left side. I'm not hitting myself with it because you're going to really break your ribs if you do that. Same thing if you're doing the lead side. Once I feel the bottom part touch the side of my body, that's the time I'm going to stop. And that's really, really important. If this type of motion helps you do this technique or this within your striking range without overextending, this one right here helps you do this technique without really going this. See how huge that is? If I do a hip rotation there, not only am I straightening my neck, not only am I overreaching or overusing my power, overusing my motions, but I also leave myself wide open on my side right here on the ribs, and I might be clocked on the head, or be hit on the ribs, or be taken down. A whole lot of nasty stuff that you could already think of. So practicing using the stick really helps you in limiting that motion of your technique. Notice that I'm not hyperextending my lead hand, and notice that I'm not fully doing the motion right here. I'm not going here, instead I'm stopping here, because the bottom part, which my rear hand is holding, is touching my side, and it's telling me to stop right there. See? And you can also do it the same on the uppercut motion. So instead of doing this motion, you switch it back again, but this time you're doing this. Now the key part there is you're not going to do the upward motion with your hand as you normally hold the stick. Instead, you're going to hold it inverted because it helps your wrist more. Because if you're going to do this, it's kind of uncomfortable and it might overstretch the part of your wrist right here. So you hold it inverted if you're going to practice the upward motion or upward techniques like an uppercut, for example, or a slash going from down up. You hold this bottom part of the stick inverted. So using my rear hand again, instead of holding this way, I hold it this way. And I'm still holding the top part of the stick with my lead hand, still pulling. Now the key here in pulling, instead of pulling on this side, which is a bit safer, here you might want to be careful because before you do this type of motion, you have to be sure that this part of the stick is really in between your shoulder and your head. Because if it's too far from the shoulder, you're overextending your shoulder. If it's too close to your face, you might hit your face. So make sure that you practice this pulling part first between your shoulder and your face. Once it touches the chest, that's the, or should I say, once you touch the upper part in between the shoulder and the face, that's the end part of the technique that you're going to do. So it's not much on using the rear hand, really trying to reach here, because that's what the shadow boxing is for. Practices your legs doing that. We're practicing the hip rotation here, hip rotation strength, and the letting you know your limited range of the technique. So you're not really doing hyperextension like that. So again, instead of holding it the normal way, holding it inverted, still holding the upper part with your lead hand. Make sure that it hits in between your shoulder and your face, and then do the technique. So should I side view, pull in between your shoulder and face, while simultaneously striking up. Now the trick here in striking up is you want to try to hit the center. So as I do it here again in front of you, try to hit the center. If you can hit the groin from your imaginary opponent, or if you're practicing it on the mirror, then your form is good. If you can hit the upper abdomen, and it's like so here, that's fine. Now the good part in using the stick is, even though it's a stick and it's really sturdy and firm, unlike the towel, which is flimsy, you can combine most of the techniques that I've already shown in practice and make it as a whole training workout. So instead of just doing one motion right here, you can combine them like, see, I simultaneously do this, to pulling back, to doing this. So once again, so there you have it. That's how you can train your hip rotation using the stick. Now remember that if you're going to practice your hip rotation using the stick, make sure that you're not going to overdo it. Because if you're going to overdo it, knowing that the stick only gives you limited space or limited training space, because it's not as flexible or flimsy as a towel, to constantly remind yourself not to overextend or not to overtrain using the stick. Because if you do, one of the very vulnerable body parts that you don't want to injure is your lower back. Because what happens is, if your lower back becomes really, really sore, becomes really, really painful in doing the stick training, using the hip rotation video, it becomes inflamed and it's really, really painful. And I've already experienced that. So, because I tried to overextend, and yeah, it's not nice. So, there you have it. Hip rotation using this stick. And this is for the advanced practitioners out there. Hope that you enjoyed this video, and as always, God bless you all, always stay safe, and take care.